Should you walk the Camino alone or not? That's a very common question and concern for people who are planning their first Camino. Is it better alone? Better with a group? Will I cope on my own? That's what we're going to talk about this week. Okay, so if you're planning your first Camino and maybe you don't have anybody that wants to go with you, maybe you don't have partners or friends or whatever who could join you, you don't know anyone who's going to be walking the Camino, and you feel like you need to walk with someone else, you might be wondering, can I do this on my own? And look, as with all of these videos, all I'm going to do here is share my personal experience and preferences. So I'm not trying to push you in one direction or another, but really just kind of share some thoughts which will help you go through your planning process and decision process. So let's talk about the pros and cons of walking alone and other ways of walking a Camino. And I'll say up front, my preference, absolutely, and if you've been on this channel for a while, you'll know, is to walk alone. Personally, for me, it's a way better experience, but let's go through the options. So I'll declare that up front. Okay, so if you're worried, what's the easiest way to walk a Camino? And I know a lot of people, maybe haven't traveled much. So when I'm looking up there, I'm looking at the timer on the camera because sometimes it runs over. So a lot of people haven't traveled very much, maybe haven't traveled overseas before, maybe a little bit anxious, and the thought of going to a foreign country with a backpack of gear and just setting off on a walk, I can understand that could be very scary for some people. And so the easiest way to walk a Camino would have to be going on a group tour, because it's going to take away all of those fears. So let's talk about what a group tour is. And there are loads of them out there. I don't really want to put links down below for people who do group tours because I don't want to be sort of seen to be endorsing them, and you might go and book one and go, hey Rob, that was awful, because I haven't used them. But if you just go and Google Camino tours or something, there are some, lots of them out there. Yeah, actually, I was just going to suggest one. I did use a tour company to help me on one Camino. Gary, thank you very much. We weren't on a group tour, but Gary helped me book some accommodations. It was a weird hybrid Camino because we were sort of walking bits and then needed transport to jump ahead to different areas, and it was complicated, and I thought I needed someone to help me locally to book it. So I have kind of done that, but not a group thing. Sorry, I digress, as I often do. So, groups. What happens with group tours? I haven't done one, but have read lots about them, talked to lots of people who've done them, met lots of people who have on them. And so basically what you're doing is you are talking to a tour company who generally organise what they call self-guided Caminos. So it generally means that during the day, it's kind of up to you, we're walking to there today, this is where we're going to be staying, see you there. And generally you'll have access to a guide who's walking as part of the group, not necessarily, but generally. And so if you get into problems, you've got someone that you can call. All of the accommodation is pre-booked for you. They're generally moving luggage for you every day, so you don't have to carry everything for you. Very often some of the meals are booked. So if you're one of these people who are a little bit anxious about the whole thing, that would definitely be the easiest option. You join a group. What are the downsides? And I know people who love these, okay, so I'm just sharing my thoughts and experiences. The downsides are that it's very inflexible. On my very first Camino, I met a lovely lady that I walked off and on with for a few days, who was loving the Camino, but hating the fact that it was all pre-booked. And the reason being that the distances that she was required to walk each day to her booked accommodation, and actually she wasn't in a group. So she was walking alone. It was a company that had really just organised all of the bookings, because we ended up having dinner quite a few times together. But she hated it because she was having to keep to this schedule, and she was getting blisters and just couldn't cope. So, you know, after a few days, she'd sort of get 2/3 of the way through the day and then have to taxi to her accommodation because she just couldn't walk that far. So, you know, that's, and I've heard that from a lot of people. You know, you're stuck to this schedule, and it may not suit you for whatever reason. You know, you want to walk shorter distances, longer distances, or you get injured and, you know, you can't change your plans. So that's one thing. I think the experience can be a little bit different. So if you're thinking of group tours or pre-planned tours, this may not be important to you, but you're probably going to be less exposed to the other pilgrims in a way, and the sort of freedom and flexibility of the Camino. That's just kind of leave it at that. But I think the overriding downside is that fixed schedule. So, but if you're really keen on doing the group thing, maybe think about, have a look at how they've got it planned, you know, and think to yourself, will these distances suit me every day? You know, definitely find out, you know, what happens if, you know, I'm 10 k's from the night stop and I can't get there, you know, those sorts of things. So that's probably the easiest way. Sorry, I'm rabbiting on again. You know, if you're concerned about the logistics and having to organise things and what if this happens and what if that happens, you know, that's probably the safest option. What you might end up doing is an organised Camino, and then you will realise, 99% of you will realise, actually I could have done this on my own. And then maybe subsequent Caminos you end up doing it on your own. The logistics is a little bit more planning, that's all. So, groups. Next one. You might be thinking, oh, look, I don't really feel confident to do this on my own. I'll take someone with me. And often you see people asking online as well that, oh, I'm going to walk the Camino. I'm going to be starting at this place on this date. Anybody want to walk with me? Word of warning. And again, this is just personal experience. I have to keep saying this. I know lots of couples who walk the Camino together, and it works really well for them. And you know, more power to them. That's great. I have walked a Camino twice with my wife, and it does not work well. And Pat knows that, so you know, I'm not kind of talking behind her back. She recognises that we like Caminos in very different styles. She's not that into it. She's, you know, into the food and the sightseeing and sort of that kind of thing. I'm really into the whole Camino thing. And so our expectations are a little bit different. We walk at different speeds and all that kind of stuff. So why not walk with someone else? So the downside is you have to constantly consider someone else in your plans. Now, I know that sounds selfish, but for me, walking a Camino is about freedom and flexibility. You know, if I'm walking with someone, you know, particularly a partner or something like that, I have to be, I wonder how they're feeling and how far can they walk today, and you know, it's kind of, let's negotiate where we're going to stop tonight, and you know, I'm happy to sleep anywhere. She wants to stay in a nice hotel. Okay, you know, everything becomes a compromise, and that detracts a bit for me from the Camino experience. So that's personal experience. I've met people who started out with lifelong friends. I don't think they were friends at the end. In fact, I know they weren't. You know, walking a Camino can be a big challenge for some people, you know, in terms of health and fitness and you know, the emotional experience and so on. You know, for some people, doing that with their best friend can become very uncomfortable, you know, and you end up squabbling and all that sort of stuff. Again, do comment down below if you've walked with, you know, a partner and a friend and it was great. You know, of course there are always, you know, two sides to the coin. The positives, of course, are that you're sharing that experience with someone. You know, and that was great walking with Pat, you know, to see the Camino through her eyes for the first time, you know, a first-time pilgrim, you know, that brought me immense pleasure and joy. You know, sharing sights and meals and things like that was great. Of course that's good. But I think, when I weigh all that up, the constraints it imposes, and the sort of constant compromise, which I know sounds very selfish, far outweighs, or is, it lends me much more to walking alone, like a lot more. And Pat's not sure whether she'll walk another one again. She said, look, maybe in a few years. If we do it again, she said, I want to walk alone during the day for that freedom, that freer experience to interact with other people and so on. Because I find when I'm walking alone, I interact with others a lot easier. If you're walking with someone, you're just chatting with them. So she's recognised that, we'll agree where we're going to stay tonight and I'll kind of see you there. So that'll be a little bit of a hybrid. So we've had groups, we've had walking with friends. I certainly, sorry to be a bit blunt about this, I would certainly not agree to meet someone that I met online. I'll meet you in Leon on the 20th of April and let's walk the Camino together. Recipe for disaster. The chances of you being compatible are just so remote. And I'm not saying that you're going to suddenly find that you're teamed up with an ex-murderer. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about the reasons why you're walking, the distances you want to walk, the places you want to stay, the kind of food you want to eat. There are just so many variables. The chances of you guys being a perfect match and enjoying conversations about the same things, the chances of you being a perfect match are just so remote. Well, if you've ever done it and it worked, let me know down below. So then we come down to walking alone. That's to be honest, the only way I would walk a Camino. My very first one was alone. It's not all roses, let me tell you that. What's the downsides of walking alone? Let's do that first. At times, I felt incredibly lonely, really lonely. And you know that saying, never so lonely as in a crowd, or whatever it is? I have sat in very busy dining rooms full of pilgrims where, everybody's laughing and joking and everybody's in a group and I'm at a table in the corner on my own. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm just saying, this is what can happen. And you feel desperately lonely. But that was through my choice. So I worked out strategies to get around that because the reason I love to walk alone is that, I want the flexibility, the freedom. I don't want to have to compromise. If I want to go lie under a tree for an hour, and just watch the birds, I want to do that. If I'm walking with someone, they're going, where are you going there for lunch? Or I want to move on and get a coffee. All of that stuff that walking alone brings you far outweighs everything else. But I'm just highlighting, you can feel terribly lonely. And obviously this is a very personal thing, whether you tend to feel lonely or not. So that, that might have happened 3 or 4 times over 40 days. You start to develop strategies around that. So for example, faced with that situation again, a couple of times, I would sort of come into the dining room, or there might be an outdoor seating area and it's pretty busy and there's not a lot of spare tables and seats, and I notice there's a pilgrim sitting on their own, and I might say, do you mind if I join you? Not pushy or anything like that. I did that once with a French guy. He didn't speak any English and I speak like about 20 words of French, but we had company, and we kind of had some sort of conversation. Don't be pushy is the only thing I would say with that. Do it with a degree of sensitivity because some people maybe don't want company, and be very aware of that. But we all understand body language and know how to behave. Very often you might be sitting at a table and, or sit at a table where there is a single pilgrim at the next table, is a less intrusive way. And, you're ordering your meal and you might go, oh, hello, where are you from? And strike up a bit of a conversation. and they can join in or not. So there's all sorts of strategies I think that you can employ to not feel lonely. So I went off at a tangent again. So what are the other pros and cons about walking alone? I can't read my own writing here. The pace is very important. You can walk at your own pace, stop when you want, walk as fast or as slow as you want. It's if you haven't walked a Camino, it's very, very difficult walking with another person at the same pace, because we all walk at a different pace. And, Pat and I walk at very different speeds, different stride. And so we very rarely are actually together walking. I'm usually 100, 200 meters ahead and stopping and letting her catch up and that sort of thing, because for me to walk at her pace is very uncomfortable. For her to walk at my pace is very uncomfortable. And you can actually cause injury over these vast distances trying to adjust your pace. So that's one of the reasons. This is going to sound weird, I actually love the social element of walking alone. And why is that? Well, when Pat and I do things together, we're like a couple of limpets, we kind of stick together and we're our own company. And we tend not to interact so much with people around us. Although I have to say, on our last Camino, we met some lovely people. But not as many as I do when I'm walking alone. And why is that? I'm a bit more outgoing than Pat. When I'm with Pat, I'm kind of, with her. When I'm alone, I'm a lot more chatty with other people along the way. And I meet lots and lots of people. So to put that in some form of context, if I was to walk the Camino Frances on my own again, I think on the first one, by the time I got to Santiago, you've got to remember that people walking on the Camino, it's like a plug of people moving down the trail. You're seeing the same people generally, day in, day out. So by the time I got to Santiago, I would have known 50 or 60 people by name. Most of those I would have had a meal with at some point. I would know probably 100 people by sight. Walking with Pat, same distance, might have known 10 by name, and 30 or 40 by sight. I mean, I'm just throwing some numbers out there, just to say that for me personally, walking alone, I'm a much more social animal. You may not be. That raises up a whole... If you want a video on this, I've posted online about this in the past. It raises up a whole range of strategies about I'm walking alone because I want to be alone, and I don't want other people, trying to interact with me. There's that type of person. There's other people like me, maybe in the middle. I'm walking alone because I want that freedom. I want time to think and reflect and free my mind. But I'm happy to interact. And then there's other people who are walking alone who are more than keen to group up. And you've probably heard that term, Camino families, where people will naturally form groups and walk together and stay in the same places and things like that. So there's a whole spectrum there. I think that's it. I've rabbited on too long. So, alone or not, if you are anxious about it, a very easy option is to, go on a sort of group tour type Camino or have it all booked for you. Just be aware that there are some downsides with that. Take someone with you. Yeah. As long as you're confident you'll still be friends, partners or whatever when you come back, that can work. And then walking alone can be extremely lonely, but for me it's a much more rewarding experience. And I'm actually, because of that, I'm actually going to walk a more remote, longer Camino next time around, because I love the solitude and so on. The loneliness is going to be an even bigger challenge for me, because I like to be alone during the day when I'm walking, but I do like a bit of company in the evening, to chit-chat with other pilgrims, and I understand that's probably not going to happen as often as I might like. So that'd be an interesting challenge. Okay, that's enough. So if you have any questions or experiences you want to share, do comment down below. But other than that, I'll see you next week. Bye for now.